Welcome. Well, welcome to the Ultra Festival supported by Ultra Magazine. And this is a very special session. And my name is Vassos Alexander, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Bruce Fordyce himself, king of comrades, and currently in Kampala, where my dad was born. We'll get on to that, Bruce, but lovely to see you. How are you?
Great, thanks. And great to see you too, Vassos.
I thought I might just repeat, you've just heard it, I thought I might just repeat for the benefit of everybody, the high esteem in which I hold you. So this is a Zoom call. It was organized for 2:00, and I have to say, shame on me. It was like 4 or 5 minutes past 2 when I came on the call. And the reason, this is the worst excuse in history, but bear with me, everyone, because it does get round to Bruce being brilliant. I had 20 minutes before 2:00, and I thought I'll just have a quick go. We have a pinball machine at home, a good old-fashioned 1990s retro pinball machine. And I thought I'll just have a little crack. And I was multi-ball after multi-ball, and it was going brilliantly. I was on 345 million when I realized that it was a minute past 2 and I was late for Bruce. And I was closing in on my 17-year-old daughter, Emily's high score. And it was like a little bereavement when I had to just like let the balls go down into the little gully of death. And I came onto this onto this Zoom call because Bruce, there you are. That is the esteem in which I hold you. You are such a legend that I was willing to forego a high score and bragging rights in my family. And it doesn't get bigger than that.
Massive. But by the way, a pinball machine, you made me quite nostalgic when you showed me a picture of it, because you said the 1990s. I can remember the 1980s, 1970s playing pinball. And I was never very good. So your score is completely amazing. I mean, I used to lose my 3 balls very quickly. And I remember the pinball machine, you weren't allowed to tilt it.
Yeah.
You know, you're not allowed to tilt it. Otherwise it all goes dead. Yeah. And I can remember we had pinball machines in our cafes. So you would go there, you'd buy 2 bubble gums for $0.01. And later on when you left, you'd buy a toasted cheese and ham dripping in oil.
Yeah.
But that was such fun. And of course, the great song from my generation, The Who, Pinball Wizard. Yeah, that was. So yeah, next time if I'm ever close to your place, I'm just going to ring the doorbell. Ding dong. Hello, remember me? I'm popping around.
Well, I only live round the corner. I only live round the corner from Paul and Joe. So next time you're in Southwest London visiting the Sinton Hewitts, do pop. We would love to see you. And I'll give you, because the thing is, that was our slightly mad lockdown purchase about a year ago. We bought a pinball machine as a family. And actually, when you've got one and it's just there and it's on the whole time, and you just, like I did just then, I just thought, well, I'll just have a little go. You get really, when you don't have to pay for it, you get really good really quickly. So the ball very rarely comes through the middle because there's generally always a way to avoid that happening. So you only really die when it goes down the sides. It's I don't know. Is that a wasted year? Some people have got really fit. Some people have done couch to 5K. Some people have written books. Some people have learnt new languages. But the Alexander family have got shit hot at pinball. Right. Well, Bruce, it's a thrill to speak to you. Do you remember? Well, do you remember? I was just trying to think. I mean, you will remember where the last time we saw each other was, which was at the Park Run Conference in 2019, in summer 2019, near Coventry. But do you remember what you were doing, what you might have been doing the last time I saw you?
Wow. Looking for my glasses in the bush.
Yeah. Actually, what you were doing was trying to persuade your wife to go in the bush to look for your glasses that you'd lost whilst drunk.
The night before.
Yeah.
I fell in the bush, or I stumbled. And they came off and they went flying into the bush, and in the dark we couldn't find them. So in the morning we went there. So it's amazing how two stories dovetail. So it's absolutely dead right. Yeah, very embarrassing moment, but such fun. I think it was at the dress-up party the night before where I went as a Sergeant Pepper's, one of the Sergeant Pepper's, the Beatles Sergeant Pepper's. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they are tremendous weekends, and God willing, we can have one again in 2021. Let's talk about. Well. Yeah. Sorry, Bruce.
No, I'm saying at the conference we do actually do some work. There is some work that gets completed.
Yeah, like a little bit. Yeah, in case anyone's wondering. Listen, let's talk about Comrades. This is the Ultra Festival after all, and Comrades, of course, is the daddy of all ultra runs. I can't imagine, honestly, that there's anybody watching this who A, doesn't know who you are, and B, doesn't know what Comrades is. But just in case, do you want to give us an overview, not of you, but of the Comrades Marathon?
No. So the Comrades Marathon is South Africa's most famous race. It did turn 100 last year. This year turned 100, the 100th anniversary, but not the 100th running because of COVID and because of the Second World War. It's missed a few years. It started off as a small race between two major cities in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and that is the cities of Pietermaritzburg to Durban. It was started by a soldier called Vic Clapham in memory of his fellow comrades there's the word comrades, who had died when he had served with them in the First World War. And he was able to get a little bit of sponsorship together for a magnificent trophy and to organize it. And it continued to be held every year, apart from those two interruptions, since 1921. And it gradually grew. It changed, and it very neatly dovetails and parallels with South Africa's history. So to begin with, it was an exclusively white, male-only event. And then in 1975, black runners and women were now eventually allowed to run. I mean, it's embarrassing when you look back on it, but that in a sense is the history of South Africa unfolding in front of you. And it's a race filled with traditions. The first is, of course, it's a weird distance. So the distance from Pietermaritzburg to Durban, Pietermaritzburg is inland in what we call the high veld. Durban is subtropical on the Indian Ocean. The distance is about 90 kilometers plus minus. It changes every year slightly because of road alterations and things. And it has a host of different traditions. One is that it changes direction every year. So the next time we run the Comrades, it will be down from Pietermaritzburg to Durban. And the year after that will be up from Durban to Pietermaritzburg. The two races are almost identical in distance, but very, very different challenges. I always say the up run shows what kind of a runner you are, because you've got to drag your body weight up some very, very brutal hills and climb all the way to Pietermaritzburg. The down run shows what kind of a masochist you are, because it's all about the pain. You get hammered. And then there are a lot of traditions associated with it. For instance, it seems impossible to a beginner, but when you've run 10 times, you keep your number forever. They retire your number, it becomes your number. And to signify that, if you run further Comrades Marathons, it is, you wear it colored, it's green. So you're known as a green number. So my number, for instance, would be meaningless to anybody else, but it's 2403. I have it in green, and I would kill if I saw anybody else at Comrades wearing my number. And then there are a lot of different medals. So it's not like your London Marathon, which you run, and that's it. The London Marathon medal is the same if you do 3 hours or if you do 5 hours. The Comrades Marathon medals change for different times. So there are gold medals awarded to the first 10 men, first 10 women. Thereafter, there are silver medals awarded for breaking 7.5 hours. There's a Bill Rowan medal named after the first winner of the race for people who run under 9 hours, because Bill Rowan broke 9 hours, just broke 9 hours when he won it. And so there are a lot of other medals, and people get very obsessed with making sure they get the medal that they are physically capable of getting. And I will have left off something. The race has started with a cockerel crow. A runner called Max Trimborn used to start it with a cockerel crow. I'm not going to try and emulate that. He died in 1985, but they taped him. And so in Max Trimborn's cockerel crow, just before the start of Comrades, is one of the most mind-numbingly nervous things you ever had to experience in your life, because you know you're about to start. And it follows the national anthem, a song called Shosholoza, which is the traditional workers' song, meaning keep on going. And then we've stolen Chariots of Fire from the movie, and so that music also gets played. So the start is incredibly moving. Lots of people cry. And then probably the thing that puzzles runners from overseas more than anything else is we finally have a brutal cut-off gun. After 12 hours at 5:30 in the late afternoon, and because it's run in June, it's winter here, so it's getting dark. Well, it's dark when the last runners stagger in, and I've had to do it. You turn your back on the runners coming in, and an official in front of you counts you down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bang, and you fire that gun. And when that gun goes, if you are one step from the finish line, you are not a finisher. You get a handshake and you get your face in the newspaper the next day, but you get a message saying, bad luck, come back next year. And that is completely brutal, because there are always a few hundred people who don't make it, who are coming around this track at the end. And I probably have still not summed up the race, but it's ingrained in South Africa's DNA. So everybody knows somebody who's run it, or that wants to run it, or will have run it themselves. The whole country comes to a standstill on Comrades Marathon Day to watch it on television, which is quite extraordinary, because millions of people watch thousands of runners walking, because that's basically what most of the people do. After 5 or 6 hours, they're broken, they start their walking, and you sit glued. And the most dramatic moment in the race is not the winner coming in fact, but it's that final cutoff, and people get hysterical. And letters get written, oh no, his foot was across the line, you should give him a medal. Give him a medal, he was so brave. And then the medal itself, by the way, is probably one of the tiniest, most pathetic things I've ever seen. Looks a little bit like the British £1 note, £1 coin, the old Maggie, it's about that size. And people look at it and say, what, that? For all that work? I mean, if you finish London Marathon, you get a serious gong. And New York, I've done. No, Comrades medal's that big, tiny little thing on a gold and black ribbon, but a little bit like the Victoria Cross, which I happen to have seen. It's the understatement. That Victoria Cross is just that little bronze made of Russian guns, metal from Crimea, with the purple ribbon. The understatement is even more of a statement. So it's a little bit like that with the Comrades medal. And we'll be back next year. We will definitely be running next year, and I think they will be swamped with entries. Oh, and the other unusual thing is, unlike many other ultras, which I'm an ultra runner, so don't get me wrong, but for many people would be the preserve of lunatics and really weird people, the Comrades Marathon attracts a field of 25 to 30,000 runners. So it's like any of your other big city marathons, but it's double the distance with hills, and throw in a few extra kilometers at the end as well.
Why do you think it is? And again, I really want to come onto your comrades' journey and your running journey, but just you're mentioning the sort of idiosyncrasies of comrades. And somebody was asking me today about the big dog race, the one without a finish that Gary Cantrell, Lazarus Lake runs in Tennessee, and he obviously is the king of the Barkley marathons as well. And when you start talking about the intricacies of that and the sort of the little weirdnesses. And then you think about lots of other ultra running races, and they have their own little bits and bobs, don't they, around them? I mean, the belt buckle for finishing a 100-mile race, which started on the west coast of America. Why do you think us ultra nutters, Bruce, why do we think we go for races with these idiosyncrasies like that?
I think it's probably because each of our challenges is so unique. I'm not belittling the standard marathon, but a 42K race, thousands and thousands of people finish those. And so you get your standard medal, that's it. But with all these races, because I think they're the preserve of creative people. I think you've got to be quite creative to get your mind through something that's long. And, as you were talking, then I realized I come from the extremely only just an ultra marathon category. I remember at the last conference, the ultra conference that I was a guest speaker at, I was acutely aware of being the sprinter in that category. You know, what you mean? You mean you finished after 5.5 hours? What is that? That's not an ultra, you know.
Not even a training run, Bruce.
That's not even that's not a training run. Yeah. And as you say, I have actually been what they call a pacer. I've been a second at the Western States 100 miler. A mate of mine did it many years ago. And there, as you say, you get the belt buckle and it has its own traditions and peculiarities, which many of the kind of normal marathons don't have. They just have a start and a lovely medal at the end and a finish.
So listen, let's talk about you. This is the film of your life. Who would be playing you, by the way?
Oh my goodness, no, I've no idea. They'd have to find, I don't know.
Well, let's say Tom Cruise. Happy with Tom Cruise?
No. It just have to be somebody with it, because I'm losing it rapidly. But I did have long, flowing blonde hair in those days. I was actually gorgeous looking, quite cute. And I don't know who's an actor with long, flowing blonde hair. I've got no idea. But
I can't think of one. But
they'd also have to be very skinny. Because in those days, I think, well, we measure in, you do stones, but we do kilograms. So I was 55, 56 kgs. Very light, very strong, fast. I can't even think who would.
So wiry, skinny, beautiful, flowing blonde hair actor. Yeah. Okay. And I would say that possibly the opening scene of the film is the Comrades Marathon of, was it 1970 something? It's on the telly, and young Bruce is watching this on the telly. And I hope this story is true, Bruce, because I've read it about you loads, but I don't think I've ever asked you. And you watch it on the telly and you think, one day I'm going to run that race. And you set off around your local park or playing field, and you only managed 10 minutes running because that's all you could manage at the time. But then you built it up.
That's exactly it. And but it wasn't quite that I just saw it on telly. It was, as I say, in South Africa, it was in my DNA anyway. And when I played sport at school, I was a passionate and keen scrum half in the rugby team. Notice I didn't say good. But whenever we had athletics, I would do really well the longer the event. So I always had this urge to run the Comrades. And then I watched it on television. You're correct. And just to put things into perspective, this shows South Africa at the time. We only had television from 1976. Our nationalist apartheid government did not want us to watch foreign films that would show people of different races getting on well together and all sorts of propaganda that they were terrified of, and possibly even something horrific like pop and rock music. So we only got television in 1976. And so I've watched the 1976 Comrades on television. They didn't film it live in those days. They showed a package version of the race a few weeks later. And I remember watching it, and I had no idea that the runner who won it was a wonderful runner called Alan Robb, who's a great mate of mine, but was to become a great rival for a few years. Alan won it. I didn't for one moment think I would win it, but I remember, I think like many people, saying, well, if that unathletic so-and-so can finish, I definitely can. And so my project from watching that was, from day one, was to run the following year's Comrades. And you're correct, I was in residence at my local university, at the Johannesburg University. It's called the University of the Witwatersrand. And I went from my residence room to our university rugby fields, and I ran for 10 minutes around the rugby fields as my first run. And I had to stop twice to walk. And because it was June, it was freezing cold. People don't believe us that it can actually get freezing cold in Africa, but it was freezing cold. And I kept a journal from day one. So I wrote that down, 10 minutes around the bits. I had to stop twice. But what I did without knowing it was I did exactly the correct thing. I made my first run so easy that I had no problem coming out the next day and running. Just by then, I think the next day I made it 12 minutes. And I built up from that. And obviously, because I chose my parents correctly and am genetically gifted for those distances, I made rapid progress very quickly. And I was nowhere near winning my first Comrades Marathon, I had a very good run for my first run.
You see, but you're quick, aren't you? I mean, you're quick over Comrades distance, but you're also quick over, you're sub 15 minutes for 5K, aren't you? And your marathon, you're sub 30 minutes definitely for 10K, and your marathon be something ridiculous too.
Yeah, my best 5K is a 14:26, and my best 10K is a 29:53. My marathon's at 2:17, which is obviously not going to do anything to remotely worry Eliud Kipchoge, but it's still fairly quick. And I enjoyed the distance. I actually enjoyed running a bit of track later on in my running career. That's the scariest thing ever. I mean, you can't mention that to ultra runners, I don't think. So please erase this bit. I've actually put spikes on and run with spikes on a track, and the race is over in under 15 minutes, and there are no hills.
Yeah, no, we'll have to take that bit out, Bruce.
Yeah, take that bit out.
Your legacy depends on it.
I've even run a couple of 800-meter races. I mean, 2 laps and it's over.
And not just as a sort of repeat for a longer race.
No, just the 2 laps. Yeah, and then a lot of coughing and tasting blood in your mouth afterwards.
Yeah. So, 1981, the first Comrades that you won. Were you confident on the start line? Were you thinking about the win? What had changed between 1977 and 1981?
So 77 was just the finish, though it was a good finish. I earned a silver medal. 78 was a massive improvement, but still nowhere near the front. And then 79, I finished third. And that was the end of me being unknown, because once you've made the podium, then you become a contender. And I saw the race leader, a wonderful man called Pete Forster, ahead of me. I couldn't catch him, but I'd seen him, and I realized that he was the same as me. He was also hurting. He was also, dying towards the end. And then I thought, well, now I can win it. And then 1980, I blew it, and I came second. Alan, who I mentioned, Alan beat me. And then 1981, there was nowhere left to hide. I had to go for the win. And I rapidly, what I did was, I'm glad you mentioned it, was I worked on my speed. I realized that you can do as many miles as you like, but at the end of the day, speed will always dominate. And the faster, more talented runners will come through. And I was very scared of 1 or 2 of the runners in the Comrades field who were quicker than me over the standard marathon distance. So I worked on that. And in 1981, I had nowhere left to hide. And then, I won it.
You mentioned the fact that the Comrades Marathon is in the South African DNA, and I was really hoping I was going to experience that last year. I had my place. You have to log on at a certain time at a certain place, and I was so pleased to get my place, and then that was cancelled, as has this year's bit. So hopefully, touch wood, 2022, I'll experience it. But so that was that was what you were always aiming for. Rather like in Greece, we have the marathon, obviously, but also to a certain extent, to frame it in ultra terms, the Spartathlon, which I've also run, in our DNA, celebrating the ancient Greek messenger Phidippides and his run from Athens to Sparta, and then back from Marathon to Athens. He had a bit of a week of it, didn't he? But
in full armor, wasn't he in armor?
Yeah, I know. No wonder the poor chap collapsed and died on the finishing line. But school stops, children come out and watch you on the street, villages stay up all night to support you. It's the most amazing thing. And I finished it, and I couldn't quite kind of believe the atmosphere and the fervor generated locally, which is of course what you guys get in South Africa. And as a winner of the race in 1981. So you've not only achieved what you set out to achieve, which is finish the Comrades Marathon, then you podium a couple of times on the Comrades Marathon, then you win the blimmin' thing.
Yeah.
How do you maintain, and I find this, a lot of my running friends who've broken 3 hours in the marathon, find it very difficult to do it again, because it just takes that little edge, doesn't it, off your training when you've sort of accomplished it. How did you keep motivated the second year, and then the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth? I mean, my goodness me, this is mental strength that some of us could hardly dream of.
Well, Vassos, I think Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, is a complete genius because it's a different kind of ring. But once you are the champion, it's very hard to take that ring off, that crown off, without defending it. And so, like all ultramarathon runners, I had a really brutal run in 1981, and it's another subject. But the crowd didn't like me because I was protesting against apartheid. So I had eggs and tomatoes thrown at me. I was a very unhappy winner.
But, we're going to get onto that. Don't you worry.
But winning. So obviously, like all runners, I swore never, ever, ever again with some other words, but there'll be children watching this program, so I can't never, ever again.
I don't think there are. I hope there aren't, because I've already sworn once.
Okay. But then within a few hours, you start saying, and because it changes direction, remember. So my first win was up. And then I sat there and thought, but no, great champions win in both directions. You've got to try and win it going down and defend the title. And then just to explain to you, when you win the comrades, it's another tradition. As you get to the stadium, and it finishes in a cricket stadium. Well, it did finish in a cricket stadium in those days. And I always terrify German guests and American guests when I take them through the course and I show them everything. I say, you're not going to be allowed to finish, by the way, in the stadium unless you can explain to the judges who stand at the entrance what an LBW is. They go white with fright. And why, if it pitches on leg, it's not out, even if it does with you. And then I tell them, no, don't worry. Sorry, I'm digressing. But the winner, as you get to the stadium, there's a little boy or a little girl who stands in the middle of the road and they wave frantically, and they have in their hands a baton. And inside that baton is a rolled up message from the mayor of the city that you've run from to the mayor of the city that you're arriving at. And that gets read out. And the winner, the leader, is given that baton. And I cannot explain what that thing is like. It's gold and black. And there's not a single winner who hasn't raised it up in the air when you get it. And then you have 400 meters to run. So you hold it up in the air, and it's like Excalibur, or I don't know, a lightsaber. All the pain drains out of you. You go into the stadium, they play Chariots of Fire again. The crowd goes mad. And then in my day, the tape was made of very hard plastic. And when you hit the finishing tape, it burst. Bang! The most incredible sound. You go, oh, I've just won the comrade. and you can't, it's very difficult not to come back. So I came back, and then I came back, and then I came back. And I need to emphasize, there was no prize money in my day. So it had nothing to do with money or prize money. I mean, I'm not bitter, but now if you win the comrades, it's R500,000, which isn't, even in pounds, that's not bad for an ultra. But I'm not bitter. if you break the record, you get R1 million. I broke the record 5 times, my own record, so I'm not upset. But
you could have done a Sergei Bubka, the pole vaulter, who he knew he had 10 centimeters in him, but he only used to go around to the diamond events that used to give him loads of money.
But actually, there's a divine English winner of Comrades Marathon, Bernard Gomersall, who's still alive. He won in 1965, and there was no prize money in 65 either. But Bernard once said to us, when he was chatting to a few of us who'd won, he said, long after, I'm sure, guys, long after the money's gone, he said, for the rest of your life, you're a Comrades winner. He said, I can be sitting down at an athletics function in Leeds, and they're presenting somebody who's just won the local cross-country race. And every time the MC says something like, oh, by the way, we've got Bernard Gomersall sitting over there on the table at the back. He won the 1965 Comrades. So he said, it's with you forever. Yeah, so it's a bit of a long way around to explain, but it's actually the harder thing, Vassos, if you're a past winner, is to finally realize that you aren't going to win it again and to have to finally give up.
Go on.
Or just to realize. So the last time I won, my sister lives in London and she had never seen me run. So she came out to watch me run in 1990, which was my last win. And when I crossed the line, I collapsed into her arms, and I said to Oons, her nickname, she's Una. She's Oons. I said, Oons, I'm not going to win it again. And I just knew. I was given the race. There was a runner who was a long way ahead of me, who had me beaten, and then he started walking. And then I even didn't want to catch him because I knew if I caught him, I'd have to work hard, and I'd had enough. And then Mark started walking. I was like, please don't walk, Mark, because I'm going to have to race you. And then he did. And then I went past him, but I knew it was not going to happen again. It just, I didn't quite have the speed. It had gone, you suddenly realize, I'm sure a boxer in the boxing ring, you just suddenly think, I don't feel like getting hit again, or whatever it is, or a cricketer, you just realize I didn't even see that ball. And in the old days, I hit it for 4. Or a footballer who just realizes they're a yard or 2 slower than they were a season earlier. And kind of that's the end, yeah.
Chrissy talks really well about this. Chrissy Wellington, our mutual friend, 4 times Ironman world champion, and she knew on the finishing line of her last Kona that, she maybe not that she couldn't do it again, actually, but that she didn't want to do it again because that was her perfect race.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. My last win was my slowest win of all my wins, and I knew that I'm starting the dreadful glide path of life. That you can pull the stick back a bit. You can pull the stick back, and it will climb. But the subsequent plummet is even steeper than before.
I mean, but my goodness me, 9 wins and comrades. What do you think about? And then, and if you don't mind, you mentioned it. I do want to talk about, that first race in 1981 and the protests against apartheid and what that must have been like for you. But just on a purely sporting level, what do you look back on those 80s years and 1990 and how do you feel?
I sometimes get a bit astonished. It is quite a long winning streak, and that the next best is some great runners, Wally Hayward, Arthur Newton, who won 5 times, and Alan Robb, who I mentioned, who won 4. I sometimes get a bit amazed, but then I realize there are other people who have been dominant as well in some ways. One of my heroes, Bill Rogers, 4 Bostons and 4 New Yorks. That's pretty spectacular. Mo Farah, you come back and you win the 10,000 meters. And before him, Lasse Viren from Finland, 10,000 meters, 5,000 meters, 4 years later, 10,000 meters, 5,000. That's astonishing dominance because it's 4 years later, you've got to be as fit as you were. And so it of course it's possible and it does happen, but I still, and I'm incredibly proud to have made a mark in the race. I think every single one of us who runs, comrades, and you'll see when you run, you write your own chapter, and I'm sure you're not going to get away anonymously when you're there. Well, I'm not going to let you, so people will know you're in a lot of trouble if you think about dropping out, because it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. I don't. My one thing, I have 0 talent as a runner, but I do have a simple willingness to just not stop. And so it won't happen. It won't
You're
happen.
You're a Spartathlon finisher. You are definitely not going to drop out.
30 comrades, did you run in the end? 30?
Yeah, I ran 30. And my last one was incredibly memorable. I was rapidly approaching 60, and I thought I'm going to try and not go out, but get a silver medal, which is breaking 7.5 hours. Not bad at that age. So I was going for it, and I was a little bit arrogant. I thought, well, you're a former winner, you can do this. And I realized at about 60 kilometers that I could do it, but it was going to be a long, grueling day. And it was going to be a battle. And I would be doing a lot of this, looking at my watch, looking at the distance marker, looking at my watch, thinking, I still got that hill ahead of me. I'm going to lose a bit of time. It was going to be tough. And the chances were that I would land up in the hospital tent on a drip, which has happened to me before. That's not fun because most of our runners, our veins stand out like highways all along our arms, but not when you finished an ultra.
Tell me about it.
They dig you with that needle trying to get it in. There's not a lot of fun.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. So thought about it, and I came around the corner, and it was unbelievable. There was Zola Budd running her first comrades, but the cheeky little imp had gone out too fast, and she'd gone ahead of a past winner. I mean, how you're running your first comrades, you know nothing about it, and you go like that. So the first thing I did was put the boot in. I just went straight past her, tapped her on the shoulder, go for it, Zola, and I went past her, and I'd gone 200 meters, and I suddenly realized, you idiot. This is the marketing opportunity of a lifetime. I pulled full brakes, and I stopped. And like all runners, you don't take a step back because you've earned that step. You don't ever go back, but you wait for the runner to catch you. So she caught me, and I said, "Come, Zolaki." A little bit of Afrikaans there. I'm going through with you, Zola. I'll take you through. You know, and so we ran about the last 25 kilometers together, which was a wonderful experience. And it's quite astonishing. She is a national icon, even though most of the people who were cheering her were not even born when she and Mary Decker tripped over each other, and when she won the world cross country title and broke the 5,000 meter record and raced the Tubies twins at Crystal Palace and all that, you know, her whole career. Well, we ran together. It was fantastic. And she's a lady of very few words. So we just, which I like, because I get quite irritable when people start to try and talk to me and I'm hurting. And so we would go through a seconding table and, do you want a water? Yes, please. You know, it would be that. And then the only thing she did say in Afrikaans quite often was, "Jessie dis ver." Jessie dis ver. I'm not going to translate Jessie for you, but Jessie dis ver means, wow, it's a long way. It's a long way. She said that repeatedly. And then also said, "I will never, ever," with some other words, "do this again." And when we finished, the welcome we got when we hit the finish stadium was too much. It was like winning. It was like absolutely like winning. And the photograph in the front page of the newspaper, the KwaZulu-Natal newspapers the following day, was me kissing Zola on the cheek and saying, "Well done, you've done it. You're a comrades runner." And I thought that was in fact, the runner who won, Ludwig Mamabolo, was a bit irritated with us, and he still has a go at me. He says, "You knocked me off the front page. I'm the guy who won it." I was on the front page, but yours was the bigger photograph. And I thought that was a good way to call it quits. 30, I can never run the most. 30 sounds like a lot, but Louis Massain and Barry Holland have both run 47 comrades. And even if they didn't run another comrades, I would have to run 17 more to draw level with them. And they both are going to run more comrades marathons. They're racing each other to 50, the first two people to run 50 comrades. And though they hug each other and shake hands every year, I have the distinct feeling that they're both hoping the other one's going to die so they can do it on their own.
Yeah, the veneer of niceness. But underneath, yeah, competitors always. Owen Wilson. How about Owen Wilson to play the young Bruce Fordyce?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
So Owen Wilson's there in the start in 1981. And some people might not know about this story, about you protesting against apartheid and what happened. So just first of all, why? And second of all, how did it all unfold?
So what happened was, as I mentioned earlier, and thank you, you mentioned it, was 1981 was my first shot to win. And I knew I had a very good chance to win. And then what happened is 1981 was also 20 years of the nationalist government apartheid policies that had been put into place. And so they had a whole lot of celebrations to mark this so-called great occasion. 20 years of the nationalist government in power. And they organized a whole lot of events to celebrate that. So it included tank parades, like almost like May the 1st in Red Square, tank parades and fly pasts of planes, and then some cultural events, some theater and some sporting events. And they chose the Comrades Marathon. And the Comrades Marathon, to its shame, agreed to be one of those events. I think, Comrades is not always covered in glory. As I mentioned earlier, only allowed women and black runners to run from 1975 onwards. And the Comrades decided to become a part of this. And so to join the apartheid celebration. So quite a few runners withdrew immediately in protest. But those of us selfishly, like myself, who thought, I knew I can win, decided, no, we'll run, but we'll show our displeasure. And what we did to show our displeasure was that we wore black armbands to show that we were not in agreement. And I was not the only runner wearing a black armband, but I was the prominent one because I won. So there were a lot of runners through the field who were wearing armbands in protest. Sorry, my dog's barking like mad outside. But that gives it some authenticity, doesn't it? And so we showed our displeasure by wearing those armbands, but it then escalated a lot, where the security police started investigating us, and we were given veiled warnings. So one of my mates, in those days there was compulsory army service. One of my mates was in the army doing his 18 months compulsory army service, and he phoned me and said, Bruce, whatever you do, you take drinks only from your friends and from your personal seconds, because they are going to put somebody at the side of the road and who's going to give you a smile and a wave, and you're going to take a glass of water, a cup of water or something from that person, and it's going to have something in it just to knock you out or give you a bad stomach or something. So that came through. And then on the day of the race, it was ridiculous. The security police drove up and down on motorbikes taking photographs of us. And when I got back to my little student flat in Braamfontein in Johannesburg, I saw it had been broken into, and my cupboards and drawers had been gone through. It was all just threatening stuff. But the crowd was also very anti-me. So it's quite interesting now. You can't find anyone who will actually admit to supporting apartheid. Everyone agrees it was a horrific, nightmarish system, evil beyond belief. But at the time, I promise you, there were a lot, because I got hit with tomatoes and a couple of eggs. And there was one lady who lined up all 5 of her children. And as I went past, they went boo, 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 boo as I ran. So I was a very unhappy winner. And it spoiled the race for me. But I won, and I broke the record on the day. And one thing I've learned about fans and about spectators is everybody loves a winner. So by the time I'd won my second and third comrades, I had long been forgiven, and I had replaced Alan Robb as the darling of the crowd. So my later comrades, I was the favorite.
And actually, funnily enough, in the 80s, and I'm just about old enough to remember this, especially having my father's side of the family were kind of born and raised in not South but East Africa, and with links to South Africa. I think it was the 80s where opinions, even those who did support extraordinarily apartheid, started changing their minds. And the world opinion by 1990, and your last win, had completely done a 180, and certainly the South African native opinion hadn't it?
Yes, yeah. So things started to change fairly rapidly, and I think it was a number of those little small steps. I would never for one moment try and put myself in the sacrifice of the people who were in jail on Robben Island for 10, 15, 20, Mandela 27 years. But I think it just slowly started to chip away at it, that not everybody was in agreement.
Yeah. Let's talk about what should we talk about? Let's talk about your book first, Winged Messenger.
Yeah.
Have you got a copy to show us?
I have, but I'm sorry
knowing that you do.
Can you see it?
Yes.
There it is. It's a really cute photograph of me running with the Winged Messenger. And so I've got to start off by immediately saying it sounds like a very pretentious title for a book, but it's actually quite a clever one, I think, because the Winged Messenger is Hermes, the winged messenger of the gods. And the medal that you earn when you finish Comrades has Hermes on it. And I'm astonished about how many South African Comrades runners have no idea who that funny look thing is, that logo emblem on the medal and on the badge with wings on his heels and wings on his back is who he is. So I thought, well, I'll start off the book by explaining who he is. He was the winged messenger of the gods. He was also the god of the roads, which is very appropriate. That's why he's there. But also he was the only god who could move from the past to the future and back and take messages and do all that and go to the world of the dead and the world of the living. And so I try to say in the book that the person you are today is not the same person you're going to be after you finish, comrades. And so I wrote it for novices. It's primarily for novices. And I mentioned that I kept a training diary, and I took that diary and transposed it into this book with comments next to everything. Like, this was a really bad idea. Why did I do this run? This was a great idea. Here you can see me improving. And it was the only good thing that came out of lockdown, because in the previous 2 years, I'd written about 500 words. And in lockdown, in about 3 months, I finished it. Because I had you were playing pinball. It's the same thing. I was practicing. And then what happened was, as I wrote, it metamorphosized into more than just a straight training, diary for novice runners to follow and to look at. And I started putting the stories in of the time. And we were talking about apartheid, 10 days after I started running, one of South Africa's absolute major commemorative days, but a nightmare day in the history of South Africa was June the 16th, 1976, when protesting students and pupils in Soweto were protesting against having to be forcibly taught. They had to be taught in Afrikaans. And they were protesting against that, and they were attacked by the police, and several of them shot and killed. And so as students, we very naively, I was a student, as I said, at Wits University, we decided we're going to march in support of them, and we're going to be there and show that we're their friend, companions in arms or whatever. We got about 400 yards outside our university entrance before the police attacked us. And there's a wonderful Afrikaans word for it. It's called moord. When moord is when you absolutely get whacked. Okay, that's the only word for it. Did I mention the Rugby World Cup final in 2019? So that's what the Springboks did to a team in one. I just thought I'd have to pop that in. It's called.
We'll edit that bit out. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, Greece weren't playing. Anyway, so that was for me a really, and I've got a photograph in the book of one of my classmates, a lovely, beautiful lady running with blood streaming down her face because she had been hit over the head with a police baton and split her skull open. And so that was a very depressing time for me, but it reinforced my running at the time as well. In addition to having watched the race on television and being inspired to run it, I now had one thing that I could do that gave me some kind of control over my life. You've got all these events going on. You've got no choice in it. I mean, we're experiencing it now. I'm not going to give you my views on lockdown and masks, but I can't do anything about that. But I can continue to run, and I can write my book, which gives you some kind of control on your destiny. So that was, I put that in. I put some funny stories in as well. There's me naked in a bath with another man in the book.
Buy it for no other reason than that.
No, because it was my great mate who seconded me in my first comrades, and he insisted on the photograph. And I have to tell you the story. He is one of the brightest legal minds in the world. He's a professor of jurisprudence at Toronto. That's the philosophy of law at Toronto University. He's currently lecturing at Oxford. I mean, he's just. But he said, I asked him, Dave, have you got a photograph of yourself giving me a drink in the race? Because I'd like to put it in the book. And he said, no, I don't want that photograph. He said, all my young students think I'm this dry, crusty, old Einstein type guy, very clever, but dull and boring. Put the photograph of you and me sharing a bath, because as happens with South Africa, is a country of drought. From time to time, they ask you, please save water, guys. So they say share baths, but by that they mean one of you bath and the other one uses some water, but we got in together. So I put that photo in.
Excellent.
Yeah, and there's a lovely one where I put, there was no run today. Why was there no run? Because the night before, the university put on a film made by a new comedy act called Monty Python, and they gave out free wine. Never going to be a run that day. Yeah.
How did you? I mean, that's fantastic, and what an absolute Bible for comrades newbies like me, like I will be this time next year. If you were going to give 3 tips to run comrades, or 5 tips, whatever you want, if there are sort of, did any come to mind just for absolute newbies who can run but who have never run comrades before?
Yeah, and please don't buy the book, Vassos, because I'm going to give you a signed copy.
Thank you.
But the 3 tips would be, comrades, is about timing. The preparation is about timing. So of course you have to run. So let's say you were going to run next year. It will be June the 13th or 14th, something like that. So we're a year away. But of course you must run and continue to run, and you keep a solid foundation, and you keep you build that base from which you can spring. But the critical time for training for the Comrades Marathon starts on the 1st of March. You'll panic because you think, what? But it's kind of 8 to 10 weeks of intense work. And that's when you really put your head down. And it's fantastic for you guys because you're going into spring. You know, for us, it gets tougher and tougher because we're going into winter, and we get darker and darker mornings and darker afternoons, and it does get cold. So, and that's the time, allowing for a taper. So that's the first thing. Comrades Marathon is all about timing. And that's how I got it right every year, by the way. And because I kept training logbooks, I could look back and say, what did you do in 81? So that you can win in 82. So, okay, don't change anything, do the same. You know, everybody thinks that now they must double their mileage, and the defending champions in particular crack a lot because they feel the pressure. And instead of saying, I won it, just do the same thing, and chances are you win it again. No, they double their mileage, and they do extra hill work, and they do go to the gym, and they do weight work, and then they wonder why they're dead on race day. So that I would say is the one thing. And then probably, read all about the race, learn about the race, because when you are hurting, and everybody does, you realize that you are part of history, and this is an occasion. This is not just a race. It's a South African celebration, and you want to be part of it and do well. And then thirdly, I would say for your first run, don't tear the middle out of it. Try and enjoy it, because chances are you will come back and you will improve. I improved for 8 years. So for 8 years, I got faster every year, and I learned more and more about it. So just enjoy the experience. That's the thing. Enjoy it. Wave. You're going to be wearing, I don't know, Union Jack shorts or whatever, or whatever your country, and people are going to shout and cheer, go, 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 Britain. They love the overseas runners. They may tease you a little bit about the rugby. If you
still no, Bruce. I mean, it'll be 3 years old by then.
I know, but you won't have had the next Rugby World Cup. So they might, but then they won't mention cricket, where you've been hammering us. So it balances out nicely. And just enjoy it. And when you're a foreign runner in the Comrades Marathon, you get spoiled rotten. Everybody loves you. You've got special area to go. The ordinary runners queue out of the expo center to pick up their numbers. No, you get led in. Your VIPs. You sit down. Look, you do pay in pounds, so that's one of the reasons. So with our terrible currency, they love you even more. And just enjoy the entire experience. Yeah. It's a wonderful thing, and you'll have to join my bus tour, Vassos. That I'll definitely keep you a place there. I take a bus group over the entire route, and I think that's critical as well. A lot of people say, no, I don't want to know what's coming. In Comrades, you do want to know what's coming, because it's critical. It's critical to know what hills are ahead of you, and to also get a sense that you're getting to the end. And if you're just running and you don't know the course, it can be pretty grueling. That's one of the things. And then finally, I'll also keep you a place, Vassos, the Fordyce after party.
Oh, yes.
It's legendary.
Yes, please.
Legendary.
Yes, please. Yes, in fact, that's the only reason I'm running, Bruce.
Yeah, the after party. Starts at 12 o'clock, and people limp in there. And sorry, stop me if I'm going on too much, but because I haven't run since 2012 when I finished with Zola, I don't really miss it. And and it's a massive ego trip if you are a past winner, and you can do all the cocktail parties and sign all the autographs, and you don't have to go to bed early because you're not running. But the time I do miss it is the day after, because the day after everybody's limping, and they really are limping. It's a serious limp. You can't get off a curbstone. It's impossible. You have to hold on to somebody to get off a curbstone. when the planes fly into Johannesburg with runners on board, there's a special unit for people who are in wheelchairs. They bring that up and everyone does a penguin shuffle into that and they lower it down so they can get out. So that limp, the post-comrades limp, I get incredibly jealous. And I just wish that I was limping, because it's a limp of pride, and it's got nothing to do with whether you won it or you just made the cutoff gun. You're brothers and sisters in arms. Everybody just gives each other a smile. So when they arrive at my after party, they're all limping. They've got their medals around their neck, and we have a couple of drinks, and then I tell a couple of funny stories, and then we just invite people to stand up and tell their story if they feel like it. And everybody's a bit nervous and shy, but over the years, we've just had some stories. Jim Panton, Royal Army Air Corps from the UK. His mother so badly wanted him to run comrades, and he didn't because he went to school in South Africa. And in fact, one of our schools on the route, it's called Kersney College. It's on the course, and all the schoolboys come out. And his mum really wanted him to run, and he didn't. And then she died, and he came to the after party and he told the whole story. And then he dug in his pocket and he pulled his medal out and he said, "Mum, this is for you."
Oh.
And there wasn't a dry eye in the place. So and then some other very, very funny stories. We don't have time now, but a guy from a stevedore from Grimsby had told the funniest story you've ever heard. It's called "Has Anyone Lost a Shoe?" And it's the funniest story I have ever heard. We laughed until we cried. So even though he's not there nowadays, he ran a couple of times. I tell the story because people insist. So you've got to wait for it. Has anybody lost a shoe?
Well, excellent. I will look forward to that. Is it in the book? Is it in the Winged Messenger?
No. No, you see, the problem with Winged Messenger is you've got to go back to 1976, 77. So the race was very different, very different. I mean, it only had 1,600 runners. They posted your medal to you a month later, engraved by the South African Mint. There was no prize money. There was no Chariots of Fire playing at the start. Why? Because the movie wasn't made until 1981. Vangelis hadn't written the music yet. There was an old national anthem and the old flag that we don't have anymore. Still very dominantly a white male event, with a handful of women and a handful of black runners. I mean, I came 43rd. There was one black runner ahead of me. In the top 100, there were 3. Now, if you come 43rd, there'll be 40 black runners ahead of you, and the winner. So it's a very different race.
We have time for one more question,
which
is the fact that I'm delighted to find you in Kampala setting up Parkrun Uganda. About time. And that's a nice exclusive for the Ultra Festival as well, because that hasn't been announced anywhere.
Are we going to tell that story?
Go for it.
So the Parkrun conference. So
we should tell people that you are in charge of Parkrun in all of Africa. Is that right?
Southern Africa, but I suppose my dream would be to help contribute to spreading it right through Africa, and it will happen, if not me, somebody else. But at the moment, we've got South Africa, we've got Eswatini, which used to be Swaziland, and we've got Namibia. And because Parkrun is being very carefully managed and we have to be aware of our resources, I'm champing at the bit to get Zimbabwe going, to get Zambia going, I personally want to go to Mauritius, and I will go there for 2 weeks to measure the course. I think at least 2 weeks, Bruce. Yeah, at least 2 weeks. We'll measure the whole Mauritius. But we're being held back, and no, that's fine until Parkrun is ready. But the powers that be at Parkrun, not the powers that be, but the management and everything, had the rug swept from under their feet when they invited a group of Ugandan parkrunners from Burgess Parkrun to come and dance and give a Ugandan dance at our conference. And they were brilliant. Everybody loved them. Everybody cheered. And then at the end, the leader of this little delegation of this troupe of dancers said, "But by the way, guys, we are so desperate to bring Parkrun to our friends and families in Uganda." And you could see management was a little bit tense and a little bit tweezed because this was they didn't know how to say no. And of course, everybody was saying, yes, 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 Uganda Pop. So you and I, Vassos, being cheeky devils, I'm just making sure that it's not just me. We kept the theme going. So I had to give, later in the conference, I had to give Paul Sinton Hewitt a lovely, beautiful wooden, it was like a plaque with silver metallic engraving on it to thank him for his wonderful contribution in starting Parkrun. And so what we had done is we'd engraved every country in the world that's a Parkrun country, from Canada to New Zealand to Russia, everybody on that tablet that I gave him with the suitable inscription. And so I called him up onto stage to give it to him. And I said, Paul, and we just want to thank you. This is every country that you have made a massive difference in, except for Uganda. And then I'll leave it up to you, Vassos, because at the end of the conference, you ended it by saying,
we'll see you this time next year for the 2020 Parkrun Conference in Kampala. And it didn't happen, but I think that's only because of COVID. I don't think that's anything to do with the fact that, there won't be a Parkrun Uganda. And we do find you, that's true, isn't it? You are currently in capital of Uganda, which is Kampala. So we will just let everyone draw their own conclusions. Bruce, as always, it's an absolute thrill to see you and chat to you. And thank you for your time. And I genuinely can't wait to read the book, The Winged Messenger.
And I genuinely can't wait to see you cross the finish line at Comrades.
Thank you.
That was great, guys. That was excellent. I was really looking forward to sitting in the background and seeing what was going on.